Yeah, right, guys. Just thought I'd say hello. I'm Jack, obviously. Fucking thanks for listening to the show and that, mate. You fucking let me know what you think of it when you're done with it. Fucking send it to a mate. Put it on your Instagram stories. It's probably one of the better ways you can share it with people. Leave a review, mate, if you're listening somewhere where you can leave a review. Otherwise, I'll let you get on with the show, mate. Yeah. Alright, guys. Thanks for that, Jen. I'm the world around you, and this is Pause for Thought on Threshold FM, and this week we're looking into something that, according to scientists, is going to affect 1 in 3 people in the UK. But according to my own research, only currently affects 4.47% of the British population. With it rumoured to rise to affect more people, I thought it was something we should look into this week. And it's got causes such as pollution, global warming, dumping of waste, climate change, and even diet. Right? It seems it's something that is completely unescapable to the average person. And it's tightening around our British Isles like the collar of a fat man in his office eating a microwave meal, slowly finishing us all off like a tired woman or a gay man at a gangbang. Now, if it's not obvious by now, this week we're going to be looking into the big C. Does it exist? Will it eventually kill us all? Is it actually something that spreads? Or is it all a lie, concocted to try and control how and where people live their lives? We've all seen it. I reckon we all know someone that believes they've been touched by it, and we all know that we don't want it inside of us. Yet very few of us know someone that was actually killed by it. But where did it come from? Who made it? Who's in control of it? And most importantly, who benefits from it? With written records of the Big C stretching back as far as the start of written history, it's hard to believe it's never been a part of us. But with such obvious misinformation surrounding it, it's getting pretty hard to believe in it at all. With some claiming in modern times that the moon is a strong factor in its spread around the world, there are some people from Somerset and the early 1800s that claim they're benign, when in reality there is actually way closer to 50. So why does it want to kill us? Is there a battle going on between us and it? Or is it simply trying to change us to possibly force our evolution? I'm hoping that I can help with all of that and more. But first, let's have a song. This is Crystal Occasions by Jim Jones and the Heatmakers. Realistically, if you think about it, it should be something that's completely invisible, but for whatever reason, it isn't. Many claim it's because of the way the light can be reflected and refracted by it at the same time, whilst others seem to think it's because there's just so much of it. Environmentalists want you to believe it's because of pollution, but even there, by quoting a random environmentalist, it shows what it actually does. It's the literal and metaphorical divide that separates the known world. People have tried to control it for years. Gods have owned it. Wars have been fought for the control of it. But has it always posed a threat to us? Now, according to myths, it has, as we learnt a few weeks ago in our the big flood myths episode. But does a rise in temperature actually mean more deaths? Using the very basic science taught to children, I can imagine not. Mostly because the water evaporates, doesn't it, when it gets hot? So that just means that our air is going to get a bit denser and a lot more humid. It doesn't actually mean there's going to be more water on the ground or on the floor and that, But there's no real concern around the idea of a rising tide if you believe that water can be evaporated by heat, because that's what we're taught. So to be taught that the water's going to evaporate because it's getting hotter, and then the water's also going to rise and there's going to be more water because it's hotter. It's nonsense. But what can we learn from the sea? There's someone that I found that believes the moon's larger craters are the shadows cast by the Earth reflecting off of the moon's surface, meaning that the whiter space on the moon is the oceans and the seas themselves. Apparently, though, this means that there's another continent on Earth, but this person seems to be alone in this theory. No one else seems to really talk about this. But yet, the moon plays a massive role in the skies, controlling the skies, telling them when they can and can't move closer with the sea, talking to it, commanding the water like a conductor instructs their orchestra. But an orchestra already have a good idea of what to do. A conductor only really exists to further drive home the belief in people that they need a leader. It's not really for the musicians themselves, it's for the people watching, because people don't want to think, oh, there's this group of people that have these skills that can do it by themselves. They want to teach people that a group of people can't work together for the sake of something bigger than themselves without that guiding hand. And to many, possibly the invisible hand could be a way to look at this. And maybe that's what the moon is. Something that's projected or placed in our skies so that we can believe that there is some control over the natural elements of Earth. Without the moon to guide the Irish Sea, right, it's fucking well easy to believe that Blackpool could just be washed off the face of the earth. And that'd be a travesty, mate, especially for places that only look better through comparison, like Lytham St Anne's. Right, mate, just a quick little advert for myself. If you're enjoying this, fucking join the Patreon, mate, if you can. For a little as a quid, 2 quid, 3 quid, tenner, whatever you want to throw on there, you get the same stuff either way. Obviously, it's nicer if you put like 3 quid on rather than a quid, because I'll only get like 75p out the quid, but still it's 75p more than what I'm getting now. It's just you get access to video versions of these, discounts for canvases and maybe some other little bits off my website, and you get access to the PDF versions, that's the digital download versions of my books. Anyway, I'll let you get back onto your show. But by using the moon, right, as a means of telling people what they can and can't do, how are tides any different to astrology? People look into the stars and trying to predict the future, except the tidal experts aren't as far-sighted. They can't tell you what's going to happen in years' time. They can only tell you about the here and now, maybe at most, probably the next 3 days or so. So what if this idea of the moon as the orchestral conductor of the world, what if that's a bit deeper? Because if you think about it from the point of view of the orchestra, they can only see one side of the conductor. And because of the lights that's shining on them, they're unable to see the audience. And we could easily tie that in with what our planet and what we can see. We can see the moon. We watch it every night, suck up our oceans by a few feet like a kid in Morrison's cafe with a fucking straw, sucking up a fucking milkshake or Coke through the straw. And we're not quite getting it to the mouth, not quite getting it to the moon and then just dropping it back in, you know. Never quite getting that liquid to the top to cause any change, just watching it go up and down. Like a conductor's baton goes up and down, right? Yet the audience is able to see the flailing arms of the conductor and also see the posh people clanging the bits of metal together on the stage, whilst also, right, having the added benefit of hearing it all as a piece of music. Because I've always assumed that if you're in an orchestra, you probably aren't able to actually enjoy the music you're making itself, because you've got to concentrate on when to start and stop making the noises that you've got to be making. But this is where it starts to get a bit complicated. The orchestral conductor is controlling the people in order to play the instruments, which make sounds happen, and together they make music. So what's Earth's music? Are the large expanses of water the equivalent of the people? Or is there something that we're unaware of which is actually the instrument? Are we the equivalent of the individual sound waves being made to vibrate at a higher frequency for the fifth-dimensional entities that want to eat our energy, vibrating in a frequency of fear from the ever-impending doom of being swallowed up whole by the oceans? Oceans that are filled to the brim with prehistoric man-eating monsters who also have access to weaponry, mostly outdated and rusted weaponry from naval ships, but still weaponry nonetheless. Are we being played by the moon? That's my question here. Is the moon playing some form of game with us? That's the song. This is Serial Killer by Method Man and Redman. The moon controls the seas and oceans by something that scientists have decided to call tidal force, which is to say that the moon's got its own gravity and has the ability to pull the water, and apparently the Earth itself to stretch it out towards the moon. And gravity, right, for our planet apparently comes from our molten core, meaning that there must be some form of molten core inside the moon and all. Now, some people might also say it's because of the density of the planet, but that seems to conflict completely with the idea of a molten core, because if the middle is made up of a hot goo, then that means the middle of the planet is actually hollow and filled up with magma. But that could mean that the moon is also hollow and filled with magma. And that would mean that not only do we have the potential of a ticking time bomb underneath our feet at every moment of our lives, there's also one dangling above us at night time, the very time where we're meant to be trying to relax and sleep and enjoy ourselves, you know. Now, it could easily be argued that whoever came up with the idea of the moon did it to stop people from relaxing. Maybe when it got dark, there were people that weren't doing anything and being entirely unproductive because they were scared of the dark or something, so someone decided to throw the moon up there. Now, it's not necessarily a big, perfectly spherical, almost smooth rock. It might actually be some form of mirror placed there by an ancient civilization to increase productivity and create what is now known in the English language as the night shift. But getting back to the fella that proposes the craters of the moon are a reflection of Earth's continents, they claim that there's too many craters visible on the moon for this to be true, and he argues with themselves, meaning that there could be more continents or land masses than we're currently made aware of by the education system that's afforded to us. But I have my own theory on this, and it relies a little bit on the idea of a glass dome, and it reflects quite well on a portion of the flat Earth theory, which is quite nice that it fits that together in a way. Doesn't lend to it completely, but it kind of, you can take aspects of it if you like. Now, if there is a dome over the Earth, it's safe to assume that that material must be quite thick, meaning there's the possibility for there to be two reflections on this surface, one on the face, like the closest face of, let's call it glass just for the ease of it, and one reflection on the outer layer of the glass. Some of them reflections, right, some of that will overlap, making bits darker, like when you've got more than one light in your bathroom and you start having a shit and you're messing with the fucking finger puppets while you're playing, you know, while you're pooing, and you make shadows go darker and that. But it might also make it then seem like you've got more continents on the reflection. Just like if you're playing with the shadows a lot, you can make it look like you've got fucking 25 fingers, when in reality you know that you've only got 10. Just as a thought, a little thought experiment for you. But getting back to the sea, what if the sea isn't as expansive as we believe it is? The idea that nothing at all has ever risen out of the water in the massive open seas just seems silly, innit, when you consider that there are parts of the oceans that do have massive bits of land just jutting out of them. And then you've got the fact that gets thrown around to say that most of the planet's made of water. Well, most of the planet is made up of water, not made of water, but has a lot of water on it. Again, that just seems silly, innit? It seems like a great way to control people and to stop people from moving around. Obviously, right, there is something that we call water there. But if all of the maps that exist stem from drawings done by people at sea, then how can we believe it? It's also worth noting that a lot of people at sea would be pissed a lot of the time while they were rowing around and that, because obviously that water it's been boiled and it was better for them to be pissed rather than to drink water. And they're getting about on these big ships rowing, probably tired, and because they're pissed they won't be rowing that far, so distances would easily get exaggerated because people would want to get paid more. Oh yeah, we've been away for fucking 4 months, but we've just been sat in the middle of the fucking, what is actually a pond, for 2.5 weeks, and then rowing round it in a circle, pretending to be cartographers, you know. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking to yourselves, well, what about the satellites? You know, they show us the Earth in its truest form. But apparently, right, they don't. Many people seem to believe, and various authoritative figures have told the public, that a lot of the images of the Earth get recreated from different photographs taken from space, which seems amazing to me, innit? Because that means if there is a geostatic satellite above the Earth, that means that satellite has to be moving at 1,000 miles per hour at any given time. Now, I know there's no friction in space, but there's fucking loads of dust and rocks, we're told, all around our Earth just floating about, so it doesn't, like, I don't understand. Honestly, I don't understand how it's possible. How do we get the satellites up there for a start? Because it's going to be fucking heavy. But I'd imagine that a metal that can withstand an impact at 1,000 miles per hour or more has got to be considerably heavy. Like, that's got to be pretty weighty, innit? Like, that sort of fucking chunk of metal. And then to fire it up there into the sky would take an awful lot of force. So it seems very strange that we would repeatedly go to the efforts of doing this just to take blurry, incomplete and otherwise unusable photographs of a thing that we already know supposedly exists. And there are other satellites that exist as well, known as orbital satellites, and these satellites travel around the Earth at different speeds, obviously at different speeds to the Earth's rotation, otherwise they'd just be considered geostatic satellites and they'd appear to stay in place around the Earth. Now, I can't imagine these orbital satellites are used for taking photographs, because it'd be like trying to take a photograph out of a car window of another car that's driving in the opposite direction to you. And even if it's going in the same direction, it's still going to become out blurred, probably blurrier than the geostatic ones would come out, so just completely unusable. Anyway, let's have a song. This is Bird's Eye View by Static Selector, Raekwon, Joey Badass and Black Thought. If you're enjoying this, right, do you know what you might like? You might like a fucking Bollock Boy, mate, which is a little robot with mouse testicles in. £6 on worldaroundyou.com. There's other stuff as well, you know, like mystery boxes and fucking things I've made out of rats and dead ducklings and that, so fucking give them a look, mate. The prices start at like fucking £1 for a piece of fossilised shell. And then prices vary going up. You can also get shirts in that as well from there. But go and have a look, mate, worldaroundyou.com. But I'm guessing if you've found this, you already know about all the taxidermy. But still, you know, maybe now's the time to treat your missus to a little mouse heart. You know, I don't know you, though. I can't tell you what to do. I'm just glad you're listening to the shows. I'll fucking let you crack on. The seas have been a proper good way to make money, though, and all. You know, if you think as far as inventions go, the seas and oceans are right up there with Warburtons and their bread. Because could it be that there was in the olden days, a financial war between different manufacturers? So I'll put it to you, dear listener, that whoever developed the moon, right, was the sole benefactor of that financial war that was fought in the olden days. We recently seem to have finished the war on terror. That's terror with an O-R. And most of that was fought mostly in the air, right? So it only makes sense that the war on water would be fought on the ground, or terror with an R-A. That's T-E-R-R-A. Like T-E-R-R-A, as it's also known. Meaning that next, right, we might fight the war on skies, and the war on skies might be fought at sea. But we're not here to predict the future, we're here to talk about the seas, right? And specifically the war for the seas, which I imagine would have been pretty lucrative, not just in the sense of fucking making ships and making and selling rope, both new and old, anchors, uniforms, selling food, making booze, pillaging people, pirateers, robbing treasure, digging up old treasure. You know, there was lots of money to be made in, you know, like kidnapping. Maybe occasionally, you know, going and threatening someone, I'm going to burn your pub down, telling other people I'm going to fucking rob your boat, and then killing everyone on that boat, taking a couple of them as staff, and then being like, right, I'm going to go and sell you, the staff, to another country as staff, and then I'm going to take all your cannonballs, and I'm going to sell them at the scrapyard, and I'm going to try and get, you know, apparently you can get about 30p per cannonball, which was a lot of money in those days, you know, 30p. They hadn't even really had. There was the introduction of the decimal. That's why they started charging 30p for them, because the cannonballs looked like the decimal point that they started to then use for currency. But there's other ways, you know, that this made money, though, in the sense of solving the issues of how do we get across the water. Bridge manufacturers against boat builders, submarine plants pitted against early aircraft developers, snorkel and flipper fabricators fighting for the seas, whilst fucking dinghy developers were using underhanded tactics to get included in the oceans. Now, dinghy developers most likely decided to work alongside the boat builders in the hopes that they could sell a few units per ship. Not enough to help everybody, you know, on board these ships, but enough for people to know that dinghies lasted the duration of the wet war, or the Wave War C, as it might have been called. The commotion in the ocean, mate. That'd be a better name for it. But, I mean, tabloids probably didn't exist or have the wherewithal to use catchy headlines back then. What else have we got? We got pond bonding, which would be a good way to describe the secret connections between the different warring factions. I mean, if this happened after 1945, it would have definitely have gotten referred to as World War C, which works on multiple levels because C is also the third letter in the alphabet, so that's quite nice. If the fight was a one-off occurrence, then maybe assault water would be good as a headline if there's a comma in between, as in, because it sounds like salt water and it's assault water as into fight. If they were happening all at the same time though, but weren't causing much harm, maybe seeing spars, as in C apostrophe N spars or sparfish. Anyway, it's getting us a bit off track there. Just random headlines that we could use. What if the water, though? What if the water was put there as the flood myths do suggest, but instead of by the gods as punishment? That's purely just our perception of it. What if we exist on some form of mould that's growing on agar jelly in a petri dish, but that petri dish is our dimension? The agar jelly is the oceans and the mould is the ground, and occasionally a bit of wind moves a flake of mould around the dish, like how they invented penicillin, and that's why they teach us about that so many times throughout our school careers, so that we can try and understand this metaphor here. And you can take this further as well, because if we're existing in a petri dish, then surely the sun is the little light beneath the microscope, and the reason why the back of an eye looks like the moon is because the moon is the back of an eye, and which we're seeing through the scope. And the reasons why it looks different most days is because the thing that's investigating us is just doing quick observations every now and then. Now, I know that we've all heard of UFOs, and I've taught you about greys, and we've touched on reptilians, and I think I've touched on the Anunnaki and all. And for those of you that aren't sure of the Anunnaki are the race of giant humanoids, not to be concerned, conflated even with the Nephilim or out like that. Nothing like that, nothing biblical. They're a bunch of aliens like Enki and Enlil that we did learn about quite a couple of weeks ago in... I want to say the ancient Grecian creation, maybe. There was Enki and Enlil, possibly. It was in something. Anyway, they're from the Anunnaki and the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which, again, fully recommend you give the Emerald Tablets of Thoth a listen to or a read. But the Anunnaki are a race of giant, massive people, and they're from the planet Nibiru, also known as the Planet X. Also known, apparently now, as something like fucking Nebi 17 or... Rilo 17 or something. So people have now gone, yeah, that planet exists, we know where it is, which means that there is an extra planet in our solar system which for some reason orbits in a very different way, but different, very, very different to what we're about to talk about, because we're about to talk about USOs, which are unidentified submersible objects, or underwater submersible objects, but I think it's unidentified submersible objects. I think I've just made a little mistake there in my notes. And there's loads of different stories about USOs, but the one that I liked the most was these details about a species, or at least, maybe not a species, but at least a group of aliens that were hanging out under the surface of the world's deepest lake, which is in Russia. Now, the lake itself is called Lake Baikal, and it's apparently home, or at least of interest, to a group of aliens referred to as the Swimmers, which are a species that seems to be about 9 foot tall and have got heads that resemble jellyfish. And out of the group of 7 divers from the Russian military that discovered them, only 4 of them survived the encounter with them. Now, this took place in 1982, which for those of you that aren't great at maths is exactly 4 years after 1978. And what happened was, in the depths of the icy waters of Lake Baikal, they were knocking about down in the water, and they just bumped into a group of these 3 metre tall humanoids who were all wearing skin tight silver suits, which does seem kind of 70s. But also, I do wonder if I don't know if they do wear these costumes. Do the aliens wear costumes? Why would they wear clothes? If they're more advanced than us, surely they've evolved to not need clothes and not need to cover the genitals, which is the only reason really we wear clothes, isn't it, at the end of the day? So maybe they just got silver skin, like a shark or a young gibbon, maybe. And they also were wearing what looked like glass helmets, a lot like what astronauts would wear, so we're told. But other descriptions bring up jellyfish as well. But the human-animal hybrids do get a proper mention here in this story. That's why I like it, because upon seeing these humanoids dubbed the Swimmers, the soldiers all heard an order to hunt and capture the Ithandir, which is a half-boy, half-shark creature from the local folklore. Now, it's nice, isn't it, half-boy, half-shark and that, but, you know, it kind of seems like the creatures we use in the perception filter that we think it was put in place by the Greys, and to try and make these people believed he'd seen something else or were there for a different reason, or in order to conceal their appearance and hide in a fake memory of seeing a half shark, half man child monster. Now the shiny suit men seemed to retaliate to the military men by causing a beam of bubbles to fire the people up to the surface of the water, and then they were found at the shore of the lake pretty soon after, all with health problems caused by complications with decompression. Now, they could only use the apparatus that they'd brought to save 4 of them, which meant that 3 of them had to die. But I want to get back into just discussing these silver suits, because I think it was the Tuscumbian space penguins. They seem to be wearing weird clothes, and we look at it as clothes, but it doesn't make sense. Again, the Loveland Frogmen of Ohio wearing jeans. Maybe not. Maybe they've just got blue legs. Do you know, it just seems odd. It just seems really odd to me. But getting back into this, with the swimmers, the descriptions of them and actual pictures that are found of petroglyphs, which are like fucking doodles on rocks in that same region. They call them the Sons of the Sky, which look a lot like the skeletal creature from the Matt Smith era of Doctor Who, where that astronaut was chasing him with a skeleton inside of it. But what's weird about this, though, to me, is the idea of a shark creature living in fresh water. It just seems really unlikely. It doesn't matter that it's half man, half shark. Maybe being half man means it doesn't need salt water, but... And I know you can get rainbow sharks and silver sharks from your local pet shops and they live in fresh water, but are they really real sharks? I'm not sure. I just know that Dogfish Boy sounds quite budget. It's not really a cryptid you'd want to share, is it? Oh, the Dogfish Boy of fucking Lake Baikal. But what's also strange is a lot of lakes in that region have reported of people seeing lake monsters living inside of them. But if you remember back in the Lake Monsters episode that I did, there are some beliefs that these lake monsters are just what was the word we used? I think metaphor or an allegory for an alternative name for a rip in space and time, or possibly even a gateway to alternative dimensions. If you remember about how Aleister Crowley apparently did a spell at the Loch Ness, and that made a hole open up and demons and monsters could come through it. Maybe someone did that in Russia years ago. Russians have a lot of theologians, don't they? So maybe it's always been going on. Now, it seems unrelated, seeing how this lake doesn't actually have a dinosaur in it, but the lake itself is actually referred to as a rift lake, and it's also the largest lake in the world at 395 miles long. It's 49 miles wide, and within it holds 1/5 of the world's liquid fresh water, which is fucking mental, mate. Now, what's weird, though, is that wasn't enough for the locals there. The depth of the lake is 1,642 metres deep, but realistically, it should only be 1,640.6 metres deep, which means it gained an extra 1.4 or so metres because they decided to build a dam there. But if you think about it, right, think about putting a dam in a lake. Say that lake does feed off to rivers, but let's imagine that for a second. So you've got this fucking dam that you've put in there, but that's taking up space in the water, so that water level should rise loads. It's almost as if they'd noticed the water's going down because fucking were things leaving the water, being fired out of there by bubble beams and landing on the shore and landing in different places. It is difficult to tell, innit? But it just seems odd. It just doesn't make sense to me. So what's been leaving the water there, innit? Because we're being forced to believe, right, by scientists, like so-called scientists, that if ice melts, right, the water level's going to rise around the Earth. But most of the time, that ice is already in the water, so that's already there. But by adding a brick and other materials to the lake, you'd think that would also increase the depth by more than what ice melting would, especially considering how much material would be needed for a fucking 49-mile wide dam. Do you know what I mean? That's fucking putting in a lot of stuff there, because it's not just going to be a thin 1 brick thick wall. It's got to be a fucking sizable building. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a real dam. Well, I have actually. The Anderson Dam, but I've never been inside it. The only dam I've ever been inside is the one on Fallout New Vegas. So I'm judging it off of that, using that as a basis of comparison for this. And now that's not a very big dam, I don't think. because you can run the length of it in, fucking like 30 seconds. It's not that much. Obviously, you get slowed down by the people that are in there trying to talk to you and send you on fetch quests and stuff. But in real life, I think it would probably take a lot longer to get through a dam. Now, the science makes less sense as well when you learn that rift doesn't actually mean a tear in the fabric of space-time, but what it does mean is a hole in the earth. And this is a hole that's getting deeper and deeper. Yet, somehow, the water level's managing to rise. And you would think if water on Earth is finite, then the levels of that lake would drop, or the lake would get proportionally shorter to accommodate for the new depth that it's gotten in the middle. But it doesn't seem to be the case. It seems that the water in there is infinite. Well, what else is infinite that we know of? Space, right? Space is supposed to be infinite. So what if it's some form of rift or portal to another dimension, and that's the dimensions that's on the other side is leaking into ours? Maybe it's from the dimension we originally came from, which explains why we're not damaged as much by fresh water as we are by salt water. Yet the space above the Earth is the dimension that we'll travel to next, but for now, we can't exist within that, so it kills us. But maybe when we exist in the dimension that we view now as space, we can then come back to this dimension and interact with it, just like how we can interact with fresh water and salt water. And it makes sense that Lake Baikal is a portal to another dimension, maybe even the alternate dimension that we've touched on sometimes in these shows over the past year. Because obviously, guys, this is the 52nd episode. I'm counting this as the year special, and it's probably going to be shorter than normal. But this dimension where Bigfoot and legends like the Mothman, which is now available on t-shirts without his cock out, from www.worldaroundyou.com. That's www.worldaroundyou.com for Mothman with his cock out. But that could be where they come from, because the area is of surrounding Lake Baikal, which I can only presume is called Baikal. That area is home to loads of wildlife, both plants and animals, but of all the things that live there in the area, 80% of it is endemic, meaning that it only exists in that space. 117 species of snails specific to the region. There's 160 types of aquatic worms that aren't found anywhere else, which silences the idea of underwater cave networks in the area, linking all the lake monsters that we learnt about last year. The idea that, it's just one lake monster moving around the world through all these underwater caves. No, can't be. Can't be anything to do with them, because if there was these underwater cave networks linking Nessie to the Lake Champlain and linking Loch Ness, if that did exist, then surely they'd exist here as well, meaning that these 160 types of aquatic worms and 117 species of snails would be found in other places, but they're not. Now, what it could be, right, is that this place in Russia could be the one true entrance to the Hollow Earth. And that might be why the Americans seem to have a real hard-on for owning their own way into the Hollow Earth, because the Russians have access to it and the Americans think to themselves, we've got to be better or the same as the Russians, we must compete. Now, these species that I've discussed here, the aquatic worms, the swimmers, the snails, they could be from the Hollow Earth and somehow seeping into our layer of the planet. But it could be more likely that they're all in fact aliens, and instead of being from a different planet, they're from a different dimension. Now, it might not be the fifth dimension, but think about fish, right? I mean, generally things in water could be from a different dimension, because fish can interact with their surroundings better than we can. They can use vibrations, they can school, they can move in any direction. And this lake itself here has 33 species of endemic fish that don't exist anywhere else, along with a fucking half shark, half boy child creature that lives in the area. Now, evolutionists, right, they want you to believe that we came from the seas, and that's fine because it kind of makes sense with this. But could it be simplifying what the seas are? Couldn't you imagine, right? The seas and oceans are the borders of the dimensions, and the rising tides are the dimensions bleeding into each other. One thing that won't surprise long-time listeners to the Pause for Thought is that crustaceans, specifically prawns, or shrimp as they're known overseas, otherwise known collectively apparently as amphipods, have colonised the area.
350 unique varieties of them in that lake alone, which to me seems like evidence to back up my theories in the episode about how shrimp are aliens and they're trying to take over the world, the krill, the phytoplankton, things like that. Now, there are other strange things that are happening around this lake, though. Almost like someone's trying to set up plot devices in the area to help explain future events, if life was a TV show, as we learnt in the World Stage episode. Now, I found claims that a Chinese company was going to bottle up water from the lake and try and drain it and flog it in China. And then I found claims of a uranium enrichment centre 51 miles downstream of the lake. So, if the water levels did go down, it's not because spacecraft have been leaving the waters or anything like that. And maybe, any potential radiation discovered there in the future isn't from aliens using an advanced form of fuel to power their ships through the water and into space, the above dimension. It's because of the locally stored uranium and the Chinese bottling up water. But apparently the Chinese weren't allowed to bottle up the water from there. So they've lost that plot there. But maybe does uranium cause water to evaporate? I'm not sure. But what do you think? Are the oceans and seas actually just wet stuff that surrounds us? Or is it air in a different state that affects us whilst we're in there, making us wet, as we call it? But what if that's what the edge of an expanding dimension does when it interacts with something that belongs in our dimension? And that's why we don't seem to have anything that is evolving to return to the oceans. In fact, it seems to be the opposite. Fish and marine mammals seem to be dying out, not multiplying. And could that be because the creatures are getting used to living in slightly different conditions, in an advanced form of evolution, as these creatures beach themselves in order to have their souls trapped in our dimension and grow to become victims of the grey aliens' perception filters? Maybe the creatures that feed off of us from the above dimension are desperate for new flavours, or more realistically, they're panging for that old flavour of the second dimension. Like how when we were younger and they used different E numbers and flavouring so food used to taste better. Could the soul of an orca be like MSG to a fifth dimensional entity? We may never know. It's just something that we won't know till we're there. But if you do think about that evolutionary thing for a minute, guys, why aren't things evolving to go back into the seas? If the seas are rising, right, fast, and have done repeatedly, supposedly, according to some geologists, and it happens again and again and again as ice ages thaw and melt and refreeze. If evolution does exist in that sense of a physical thing, or it turns from a fucking fish to a lizard, then, I'm not like in a Pokemon thing where you give it a Firestone or something, but I just mean generally how evolution is believed to work, and, sticking with that. Wouldn't it make sense that we'd be going towards the seas, not towards the trees? Because the water's taking over. But again, we may never know. Just a little something to leave you with there. Thanks for listening, guys. And don't forget to listen to Truth Seeking as well, which is me and Jimmy Budd if you fancy learning some more stuff. We'll probably be back live tomorrow night at 7 PM on Threshold FM. Otherwise, listen to Truth Seeking on Spotify or Apple or Deezer or wherever you can listen to stuff. If you work in a computer shop, leave the World Around You's podcast playing on one computer, leave Truth Seeking playing on all the other computers, and help us get up them rankings. I'll fucking see yous in a bit, guys.
Some of you obviously don't know because I can see how many people listen to the show, so I thought I'd let you know about my other show. I've got another podcast now called Truth Seek, and it's me and a comedian called Jimmy Budd, and we talk about different conspiracies. If you imagine this, except there's another person kind of reining me in and keeping me kind of on track, and also cracking jokes as well. It's funny, mate. Like, Jimmy makes me laugh, I make Jimmy laugh, and hopefully it will make you laugh and all. So that's Truth Seeking. You'll probably be able to find it through one of the links underneath. Please give it a listen and go and give Jimmy a follow on Instagram and let him know what you think of the shows. Thanks for listening, man. I won't take up too much of the time because it's over, and hopefully you're listening to all of these one after the other, or on repeat, maybe the same episode on repeat. But fucking leave us a review if you can, mate. Fucking share it with a mate, send it to your nana. I don't mind where you send it to, but if you get more people listening to it, thank you. If you did enjoy it though, fucking join the Patreon, mate. www.patreon.com/worldaroundyou. There'll be a link in one of the links in the description, I would imagine, of the one you're listening to.
Yeah.
You can join for £1, £5, you know, and you get access to all the video versions of these. You'll end up about 4 or 5 episodes ahead as well through Patreon, and you get access to some of my books as well, and a little discount code for some of the canvases as well. But even if you don't join that, fucking thanks for listening to it, mate. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully, here's the next one.